Okay, I can't fool with that. I have to do on a computer for that. All right, this is Sports for Real. Don't have a whole lot to talk about today, so this is going to be pretty short. A few things going on, the NBA playoffs. Take it out of what you want, but I'll talk about that first. The incredible Denver Nuggets. They got embarrassed last night in a game-clinching situation. They started the series down 0-2, and it looked like they could not compete with the young Minnesota Timberwolves. Then all of a sudden, the tables turned. Reality struck, and Denver took control of the series, winning 3 straight. So only thing left to do is to close out the Young Bucks, right? Wrong. Minnesota had different ideas. They beat the Nuggets last night by 45 points, 44 points in a closeout situation. These are the champions. They're supposed to know how to close out a series, right? So how is it that you get beat so bad? Now, I know in basketball, when you take a shot, you're going to miss a lot, and there are times when you're going to miss more than you normally would because of the law of averages. Some days you're going to be hot, some days you just can't find the shot. Part of that last night occurred against Denver, but I think something else is at play here. I've been talking about it the last couple of days, and it is obvious to me that these games appear scripted. And it just so happened, and I told you guys before that I've done ride shares, and I pick up people all the time. Just happened to pick up a guy yesterday in the sports industry, and we got on the subject of the possibility of the NBA being fixed. First of all, he came out and said that the NFL is rigged. I brought up the subject of the NBA being rigged because I don't want to think so much that the NFL is rigged right now. But if you can't compare one without talking about the other, we'll talk more about the NFL being rigged as the season approaches and during the season. But to lose by that big of a margin in a closeout game is not acceptable. You can't tell me that something is not fishy here. Because what's going to happen? They're going to come home and they're going to sell you the storyline that, well, we had a bad game and we had a closed door meeting and we looked each other in the eye and we decided we're going to come out and clinch this series. Well, you should have had that closed door meeting before the series began. Why does it have to come to this? It just doesn't give a good look for the league. Because what's likely to happen, and what I've seen in the past, they're going to come home and they're going to go to Game 7 and they're going to end up blowing out Minnesota. Seen it 1,000 times. So why should this year be any different? Nobody's caught on, nobody's saying anything about it, so why not let the same script unfold? But for the fact that the guy would tell me who's in the sports industry that there's a possibility that these games are all rigged and it's for entertainment, backs up everything I've been saying. Along with what Gilbert Arenas said about players in the NBA, they have a different mindset from when you play at home as opposed to on the road. I don't understand. If you got a certain way that you play, then you want to attack with the same singular focus every single time. Now, I understand you're having different parts and you can play different ways based on how the game is going, but he said the mindset that is different from the integral parts that make up your team. You should be ready to play a certain style of play every night, not adjusting according to whether or not you're on somebody else's home floor. So the stink is getting worse from my end, and the wind's not even blowing. So once the wind starts blowing, it's going to be untenable. But that's why I don't care too much about the NBA anymore, because it's just obvious about what's going on here. The other thing I wanted to talk about real quick, the Jaguars. They have a $1.4 billion stadium upgrade proposal that the owner of the Jag, Shad Khan, wanted the city to pay $1 billion. Well, the mayor has negotiated that down to $775 million. And it's going to go up for vote on the city council on June 25th. It's obvious to me that it was going to get passed if they had to pay $1 billion, but now that it's $775 million, that's pretty much a done deal. But they did something that caught everybody off guard a little bit. The Jaguars and the city, they have come to an agreement to have a community development agreement where each side would pay $150 million. And this is to develop the area around the stadium, and a large part of that will be the parks in the city. And you know, Jacksonville's got over 100 parks. This is Park City, USA, as far as I'm concerned. And they're gonna develop the major parks around the stadium, Metropolitan Park, and they're talking about create more parks around the shipyard area there to improve that east side area there. But the other part of that, the Jaguars are going to have a workforce development. So if you got all these different projects going around, it seems to me that they're going to be in charge of developing the workers to do that particular kind of work around the stadium. I don't see how else they could be involved in workforce development. But the way it's going to be paid out, the city will pay their part of that tab over 3 years, and the Jaguars, over a 30-year lease period, they're only going to pay $5 million a year. But going back to the $775 million, if there are cost overruns, and the Jaguars have agreed to take on those overruns. So in that aspect, it's a win. But all the questions for the deal came on the community development part. You know, the city is going to get grants and money from the state to improve the parks anyway. So why is it that the city should have to contribute more to that particular aspect is the question that people are asking. And furthermore, it is the mayor who proposed to raise the amount to that level. So if you add it all up, the Jaguars will be paying a little over $900 million to get their stadium done. I think it's pretty much a done deal. And if Jacksonville wants to be a player moving forward in the future, they're going to have to find a way to keep this team here in town. They don't want to go back to where it used to be, with all the toll roads and the paper mills where the air would stink. They don't want to go back to that. You got a lot of people moving here from all over the place. It's becoming kind of like Atlanta was 50 years ago. They're a little bit behind Atlanta, they're behind Charlotte, but they're coming. And if they want to keep that momentum going, they're going to have to find a way to keep the Jaguars here in town. They released the schedules the other day. Haven't had a chance to look at it, all the schedules yet, so I won't make too much of a comment. But what everybody is saying is that the Jaguars, they're going to open the season with 4 playoff opponents from last year. I would say that is I would say that's not a good thing for Jaguars, because you don't ever know what kind of team they're going to come up with. And when they do get into a competitive situation where you think they're supposed to win, they never do. It's the times when they're not expected to win is when they come through. But to have them starting out with 4 straight playoff teams, I can visualize them starting out 1-3. And you're going to have a bunch of unhappy folks around here, especially with that $775 million price tag hanging out there in the air. So it's going to be interesting. But the NBA playoffs, the NBA, they find a way to get all these series to 7 games. Then you're going to see the cream of the crop rise like you always do. But the Nuggets, how is it that a championship team can lose by that large of a margin when all the chips are on the line? I can see if it was game 1, but game 6 in the closeout, unacceptable. And then you're going to sell me about how they're going to galvanize because they got blown out, and then they're going to turn around and blow out Minnesota, and then they're going to shake hands and they're going to move on to the conference finals. But that's the NBA for you. Can't wait till football season gets here, because like I tell you before, basketball is just something to do until football comes around. The good thing about these NBA playoffs, they take us into mid-June. Then you have the Tour de France kicking off around July 1st. Training camps open up in mid-July. Hey, everything will be great again. But until then, we got to suffer through this carnage of fake NBA drama, and it's going to be a long summer until football kicks off again. But until next time, got to go to work. You all have a great day. This has been Sports for Real.